I was mistaken for the illegitimate daughter of a wealthy man. The old lady handed me a card and said, "Take this 50 million and get out of my house." I was stunned because I knew that there were only a week left until the zombie virus outbreak. The money for stockpiling goods to save my life has arrived. After starving to death, I was reborn. A week before the zombie virus outbreak, I had a big quarrel with my roommate who had always owed me money and refused to pay it back. The other party played dirty and even used their connections to cancel my dormitory living qualification. When it rains, it pours. I had to drag my urea bag and suitcase and went to a funeral parlor to take shelter from the rain. Coincidentally, an old man's funeral was in progress, and there were sobs all around. I couldn't bear this grievance any longer, so I just burst into tears. The old lady looked at me and was stunned for a few seconds. This old thing actually has an illegitimate daughter. The looks in the eyes of the people around me all changed. I wanted to explain, but I was so anxious that I couldn't catch my breath and fainted. Seeing this, the old lady sighed and said, "Seeing how sad you're crying, I'll give you 50 million. Don't think about anything else. And don't make trouble anymore." It was like a pie falling from the sky. This time, I fainted directly. But why does the person who rushed over to hug me, that is, the old man's grandson, look so much like the senior I have a crush on? "Molly, what on earth is going on? How did you become my grandfather's illegitimate daughter? It's a misunderstanding, right?" In the ward filled with the smell of disinfectant, it was the first time I saw Hank send me so many words on WeChat, and I was a bit at a loss. After thinking for a long time, I dared to reply to the WeChat message with a guilty conscience. Trying to save the situation indirectly, "I have something urgent recently. Can I explain it to you later?" "Okay. Sure." After sending this WeChat message, Hank didn't reply anymore. He really lives up to his reputation as the cold and aloof male god of the business school. In my previous life, although I only managed to survive for half a month before starving to death, I also heard about the deeds of Hank's family donating money to support various places on the only remaining broadcast. Hank probably doesn't need my reminder at all. I took the amount in the bank card and Alipay and carefully counted the long string and zeros at the end. After confirming again that I had enough money to buy food and wouldn't starve to death again, I buried my head in the quilt and even laughed out tears. I remember that in my previous life, someone won a 50 million yuan lottery prize just one day before the end of the world, and I happened to memorize the numbers. I definitely have to return the 50 million yuan of Hank's family. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty. To survive in the apocalyptic world full of zombies, even if I haven't eaten pork, I've seen pigs run. I rented a haunted penthouse apartment in the suburbs before because it was cheap. At that time, even the real estate agent was scared away by the bloodstains on the wall. It hadn't been cleaned properly. And I managed to get the landlord to reduce the rent by 200 yuan because of that. Who would have thought that after the zombie virus outbreak, the haunted house would instead become one of the safest areas? But it still needs to be fortified. First of all, the doors and windows. The aluminum alloy ones are still a bit unstable. Looking at the 50 million yuan in the card, I directly found a decoration company and replaced all of them with titanium alloy ones. I also enhanced the sound insulation of the house, by the way. Anti-theft doors were also installed on the main door and the bedroom, and door stoppers were added. Even if the zombies really rush up, I can hold out for a while longer, but people have to breathe. After thinking about it, I quickly searched online for a construction team with a good reputation and customized several anti-theft windows full of barbs and replaced them. These apartment buildings in the suburbs are next to the sea. Except during holidays, there are generally few people living there for a long time. But it's still necessary to take precautions. Although it's one elevator for one household. If I'm discovered, the people downstairs are likely to climb up through the windows. After all, in the apocalypse, what's scarier than zombies is the human heart. Although, in my previous life, I didn't see any living people until I starved to death. When going out to purchase supplies, I paid special attention to the fire escape. I found that no one lived from the 6th floor to the 8th floor, and immediately decided to lock the fire escape with a chain from the 6th floor. I took out the list of daily necessities I needed to buy in the memo. Without hesitation, I rented 4 large trucks from Xiao and negotiated the handling fee, which was 500 yuan per trip for each truck. I asked the driver to drive directly to the nearby large warehouse-style supermarket, Metro, and wait there. The epidemic has been recurring. I put on a thick mask and a hat and went to meet the manager of Metro, and it didn't attract any attention. I had already made up a reason. I directly told the manager that I was buying supplies to assist the areas severely affected by the epidemic. As soon as the manager heard this, without saying a word, he specially arranged two purchasers for me. With the experience of starving to death in my previous life, I first went to the self-heating food area. I moved 100 boxes of self-heating rice and self-heating hot pot of each flavor, with 12 boxes in each box. For instant noodles, hot and sour noodles, Chongqing small noodles, and Nanchang mixed noodles that can be soaked in boiling water. I also took 100 boxes of each flavor. Passing by the instant food area, I took 50 bags each of frozen dumplings and tangyuan regardless of the brand. I bought a total of 400 to 500 boxes of canned fruits, canned meat, and various nuts, which took up a whole large truck. I also bought a small half-truck of bread and snacks. Sunflower seeds and potato chips are essential for entertainment. When passing by the beverage area, the purchaser asked me if I wanted to donate some beverages. I quickly shook my head, pointing to the mineral water beside. I ordered 100 large barrels of bottled mineral water. Those sugary beverages will only make you thirsty as you drink them. And they'll just take up space if I buy them home. Just these things that ensured my basic food filled 3 large trucks. I quickly contacted two more Xiao rucks, just like the previous 3 large trucks. In order not to attract attention, I specially asked the driver to hang a banner on the truck body saying, "Assisting the epidemic-stricken areas." In this way, people won't find it strange. I didn't buy any rice, cooking oil, etc., because in my previous life, the water and electricity were cut off soon. It would be useless to buy them, and the cooking fumes that float out might attract people's attention. Thinking of this, I quickly asked the salesperson to bring a dozen or so silent generators, stocked up 2 large boxes of power banks, and also took a few high-power binoculars by the way. I loaded them onto the truck together with the purchased toilet paper and several large boxes of toiletries. This time, it was mainly daily necessities, such as body wash, soap, toothpaste, toothbrush, towels, wet wipes, and the essential sanitary products sanitary napkins every month. Just one word, buy. Everything went smoothly, but when it was time to check out, I met Hank. Buying so much? Hank's eyes were deep and sharp, as if he could see through me at a glance. I clenched the corner of my clothes, opened my mouth, but couldn't say a word. The salesperson beside me quickly explained for me. These supplies are all bought by this young lady to assist the severely epidemic-stricken areas. Otherwise, it would take a person probably 10 years to finish eating all these. Hank let out a soft hum, and his gaze never left me. I clenched the hem of my clothes resentfully and vaguely reminded him to stock up more supplies during the epidemic. When I got home, I found several porters specifically from the north of the city and paid a little more to let them come to the south of the city. I arranged for them to move the supplies in the underground parking lot to the 8th floor and put them away at different times without seeing each other. I didn't put anything on the 7th floor. On the 6th floor, I personally put a little supplies there to deceive myself. The elevator is just a decoration in the apocalypse. I locked the fire escape on each floor starting from the 6th floor. After the workers left, I took the elevator to move the most basic daily necessities on the 8th floor to the rented penthouse apartment. After moving several boxes of vitamins, alcohol, cold medicine, and other medicines that I bought online home, I was completely exhausted. As soon as I thought that there were still dozens of bags of cat litter downstairs, I used the excuse that I had many cats and spent some money to ask a sports coach in the opposite apartment to carry them up. These cat litter are for dealing with the possible malfunction of the toilet in the future. Sorry to trouble you. The other person had a muscular body. He put down the cat litter without even panting heavily. It's okay. I really like cats. I'm happy to help with this. After doing all these, there was only one day left until the end of the world. The supplies were almost all bought, but I still didn't feel at ease. The biggest drawback now is that I don't have any weapons. In case I'm forced to leave the safe house I built. Thinking of this, I decisively went downstairs and prepared to go to the hardware store to buy defensive weapons. I didn't miss out on high-voltage stun guns, fire axes, and anti-wolf spray. At the same time, I also bought a lot of parts for making highly lethal traps, mainly crossbows and the like, and planned to install them in the passages on the 7th and 8th floors to resist the first wave of zombies that rushed up. In my freshman year, I joined a mountaineering club and often set up tents in the suburbs. In order to resist the invasion of wild animals, I learned a lot of skills for making traps from Hank. Everything developed as I expected. Except that my attempt to return the 50 million yuan to Hank's family after winning the lottery failed. Since I had just opened a personal account, the bank didn't support a transfer of such a high amount. After negotiating several times, the bank closed for the day, and after that, the zombie virus broke out at midnight. In my previous life, I was sleeping soundly when I was on vacation at home. After being woken up twice, I put on earplugs and fell asleep again. I stayed by the window, lifted a corner of the curtain, and looked down with a pair of binoculars. There were groups of rotten zombies. Their cloudy eyes were scarlet and terrifying. And they were looking for living people everywhere. The sounds of screams and cries for help were endless. But soon they were replaced by the roars of the zombies. By the morning, the massacre downstairs had ended. I'm not a saint. And I don't want to be regarded as a lunatic and locked up in a mental hospital. I just want to live well. At the beginning, the zombies had very poor eyesight and relied on their hearing to find living people. Once there is no light and sound, they can't find anything. As the strange blood-red sun rose, most of the zombies gathered in the fountain square downstairs in the community. The roars of the zombies could be heard from the fire escape from time to time. I forced myself to calm down, opened a box of canned fruits and finished eating it, and then made a cup of coffee to refresh myself. I turned on the faucet, and all that flowed out was stinky sewage. I gave up washing the cup. The water couldn't be used anymore. Soon, went on a low sigh, the electricity, natural gas, and the internet would also be cut off. At night, a cluster of scarlet lights suddenly lit up in the opposite apartment. It was a candle. I pulled open the curtain that I hadn't dared to open several times in my previous life and took a look with a pair of binoculars. I was stunned. Through that floor-to-ceiling window, the person lighting the candle turned out to be Hank. How could he live in this place? I was stunned for a few seconds and then figured it out. Hank is not an ordinary rich second generation. He went to deliver takeout on a hot day to experience life. The first order was to deliver the cake takeout that I ordered for the scumbag I liked. But after I placed the order, I found out that the other person was a scumbag, and I was sad for 10 minutes. When paying the final payment, Hank learned about this matter. He immediately turned back to the scumbag's dormitory, took back the cake in front of everyone, exposed the true face of the scumbag, and then gave the cake to me. Now that I think about it, that's when I started to like Hank. I felt guilty and wanted to put down the binoculars. But I caught a glimpse of Hank standing by the window, making a gesture at me. What could be more embarrassing than suddenly becoming the aunt of your male god? The key thing is that I'm not Hank's grandfather's illegitimate daughter at all, nor am I his aunt. In order not to starve to death in the apocalypse, I've long since given up on caring about my dignity. But now, I've become Hank's neighbor. And we can see each other when we look up or down, staring at each other. I felt extremely guilty. I quickly took out my phone and called Hank, hoping he would blow out the candles. Otherwise it would attract the attention of the zombies. Before the call could be connected, I saw that the signal had already been cut off. There were 99 messages in WeChat, all sent to me by Hank before the network connection was lost. I was so busy observing the zombies that I didn't notice them. I quickly picked up the lighter for lighting mosquito coils, created a little spark, and then quickly blew it out. Hank was stunned for a few seconds, then quickly reacted and immediately extinguished the candles he had lit. A number of zombies constantly gathering downstairs in the opposite building finally decreased a bit. I let out a sigh of relief. He made a goodbye gesture to me. Then pulled up the blackout curtains, and there was no more movement. I wonder if he listened to me and stocked up on some food at home. I fell asleep restlessly. The next morning in the apocalypse, I used the binoculars to observe the situation in the apartment where Hank was. On a large light-colored tablecloth, a line of words was neatly written, "Are you okay?" I thought to myself that this was a silly question. But my hands didn't stop. I found a tablecloth and hung it on the balcony glass in the same way, replying to him, "I'm fine. How about you? Have you stocked up on food?" Hank replaced that tablecloth and bent over to write, "I don't live here much. There's nothing at home. Please give me some food. Aunt." My male god actually called me Aunt. For a moment, I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. Seeing the complex and unclear smile on Hank's lips, I felt completely numb. I stiffly twitched the corners of my mouth, wrote the word "wait" on the tablecloth, and then lowered the curtain. But I couldn't just let people tear down the balcony. I replaced the glass window leading to the balcony with bulletproof glass and a railing with barbs. As long as it's not opened, it's enough to resist the zombies. Unexpectedly, this made it convenient for me to send food to Hank. I estimated the distance between the two apartments. It wasn't very far. And it would be no problem to throw a climbing rope over to build a bridge. To avoid accidents, I tied one end of the rope to the table in the living room and tied a relatively heavy tin of meat to the other end of the rope. Hank was very excited, his lips opening and closing as if he wanted to say something. When he picked up the tablecloth with the words "Don't throw" written on it, I had already thrown the rope towards him with all my might. Bang, let out a low sigh. Bang, bang. The end tied to the tin of meat came loose. And the rope, losing the support of gravity, suddenly fell downstairs. For a moment, the roars of the zombies pierced my eardrums painfully. Countless zombies rushed towards the apartment building where I was. In the chaos, one end of the rope was somehow grabbed by someone. I quickly rushed up to untie the rope. Clang! The table behind me fell over, dragging a series of scratches on the ground, and crashed towards me. The powerful impact knocked me aside, and the back of my head hit the iron railing. And I passed out. Buzz. 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 Something kept making a lot of noise in my ear. And my head ached terribly. Accompanied by the increasingly close roars of the zombies and the stench of blood, I got up from the ground. Looking in the direction of the remote-controlled plane, a strong and healthy zombie was less than a meter away from my balcony. And its rotten face was full of excitement. I recognized that zombie. It was the PE coach who had carried the cat litter for me before. No wonder he could climb so high using the climbing rope. Roar! The strong smell of blood wafted over. And I almost vomited. My dizziness became even worse. Suddenly, a high-power artificially assembled crossbow came through the air and directly nailed the zombie's hand outside the balcony. Assembling the crossbow consumes a lot of physical strength. Even Hank wasn't relaxed. And his eyes were full of red blood vessels. I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay awake. After cutting the climbing rope, I found a fire axe and chopped off the zombie's hand with one swing. The stinky blood splashed up, and the zombie fell down. After this accident, I carefully tied the rope to the remote-controlled plane operated by Hank. After successfully building the transportation bridge, I packed some self-heating food and water in a plastic bag and sent them to Hank. The apocalypse has disrupted the rhythm of everyone's lives. Hank and I have become each other's spiritual pillars in the almost isolated apartments. Hank didn't ask me why I defaulted to being his grandfather's illegitimate daughter. And I didn't ask him how he knew I lived in this apartment. I told Hank about the weakness of the zombies relying on their sense of hearing after dark, and at the same time, I sent him several pieces of women's cotton-padded clothes. After the 9th day of the apocalypse, there will be a once-in-a-century heavy rainstorm. And the temperature will drop sharply. One could easily freeze to death if not careful. As for why it's women's cotton-padded clothes, let's just say I'm petty. I hold a grudge against Hank for calling me aunt. I'm actually 1.5 years younger than him. After that, Hank and I exchanged life information every day. And he even swore that he would never wear the women's cotton-padded clothes. I smiled but said nothing. At midnight, the rainstorm arrived as expected. There was always a lot of noise coming from the fire escape, and I always felt that something was wrong. Rumble, the thunder outside the window became louder and louder, almost able to cover up the noise in the fire escape. Zombies have no consciousness, and it's impossible for them to keep struggling with a lock. The only reasonable explanation is that there are other survivors in this apartment building. They were jealous when they saw the supplies I gave to Hank. After enduring it for so long, they finally found the opportunity to come and rob us. Although I locked every floor of the fire escape starting from the 6th floor, these locks can only prevent zombies, and they may not be able to prevent people. This rainstorm will last at least a week, which is enough time for them to pry open the locks on the fire escape and the final titanium alloy door. I immediately planned to transport some of the supplies to hang through the rope for safekeeping. Before the supplies were packed, the rope broke. It was corroded by the rain. Damn it. Hank noticed that something was wrong with me and used a flashlight to ask me what had happened using Morse code. The truth can't be hidden, so I simply confessed to him. It's impossible to just sit and wait for death. I picked up a high-voltage stun and anti-wolf spray and went out. The traps on the 8th and 7th floors hadn't been damaged yet, and I let out a sigh of relief for the moment. I don't know what the family downstairs does. In less than half an hour, they pried open 3 to finger-thick copper locks on the 6th floor. That middle-aged bald uncle was straining with all his might to use large pliers to break the lock on the fire escape of the 7th floor. Behind him, his wife and son were holding a fire axe to cover his back. I hid the high-voltage stun behind my back and walked up. Stop. The other side noticed me immediately and slammed hard on the iron door. You bitch. Unlock the door quickly and hand over the supplies, or we won't be polite. It's as if they were ever polite. They were threatening me to open the door while prying it open without hesitation. They already knew that I had stocked up on supplies, but they could still endure for so long. If I really opened the door, I would be closer to death. I've put most of the supplies on the 6th floor. Those are enough for you to last for a long time. Don't be too greedy. Making such a loud noise will attract zombies, and it won't be good for any of us. I gritted my teeth and tried to persuade them. Is that little bit of stuff enough? You'd better be sensible and open the door for me quickly, or I'll kill you later. Dad. There's a noise downstairs. Could it be that the zombies are coming up? Damn it. Hurry up and pry. I didn't try to hide the supplies on the 6th floor at all. It's impossible for them not to have noticed. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. The sound of metal colliding was very harsh. I clenched the high-voltage stun behind my back, turned it to the highest current setting, and slammed it directly on the iron door. Zzz, AI isa, zzz, iz, zzz. It was the sound of flesh being burned. The other side finally stopped. Get lost. I sneered. Under the cover of the thunder, the family cursed even more fiercely. When they saw that the stun in my hand had run out of power, the son of the family immediately started smashing the lock again. This lock couldn't hold on for long anyway, and it was broken after just a few hits. You bitch. How dare you play dirty tricks? I will definitely kill you today. In your dreams. I kicked the iron door shut with a bang, directly raised my hand and sprayed him full in the face with anti-wolf spray, turned around, and avoided the crossbow traps and ran back. In just a few seconds, the family rushed up the stairs. I silently counted to 3, and sure enough, the trap was triggered, and a heartbreaking scream came. The one who got caught was the son of the family. An arrow hit his calf, and blood spurted out. Dad. Kill her and then grab the key to her house. Then we can survive. Even when he was in such a desperate situation, he still didn't forget to kill me. Don't come any closer. I kicked open the cover of the fire extinguisher box, raised the fire extinguisher as if about to smash it down. Do you believe that if we attract the zombies, we'll all die? The sound of the fire extinguisher smashing down from a high place is not comparable to the sound of them prying the lock. It will definitely attract the zombies. They were intimidated. After a stalemate for almost a minute, an accident occurred. Roar, roar, roar. The zombies were still attracted by the noise here, and their roars were getting closer and closer. You bitch. I'll drag you down with me even if I die. With that, The family pulled their son and rushed upstairs. In an instant, I ran up to the 8th floor in a few steps. Just as I locked a copper lock, I saw the bald man push his wife and son directly down to feed the zombies, so as to buy himself time to escape. For a moment, the sounds of biting and scolding filled the air. Bang, let out a low sigh. Bang, let out a low sigh. Bang. According to the development of the apocalypse, by this time, the zombies had already awake and their sense of smell. After devouring the two people, they chased after the smell of the living person and rushed towards me. Whoosh! Several traps were triggered one after another. Coupled with the traps triggered by the family before, they completely lost their effect. I thought to myself that this was not good. Almost in the blink of an eye, several zombies swarmed up, and it seemed that the iron door on the 8th floor was about to be broken through. It was impossible to run home now. With a loud clang, the copper lock fell off. Fortunately, having fulfilled way, there was a fire axe that I had reserved before next to me. Without thinking about anything else, I raised the fire axe and used all my strength to chop off the heads of the two zombies in the front. Puff! The stinky blood of the zombies spurted out. I quickly turned sideways, but I was still splashed half covered in blood, and the fire axe was completely useless. On the stairs, several more zombies were frantically rushing up. The nearest one was less than half a meter away from me. I raised my foot to kick the zombie, but instead, it grabbed my leg and pulled me down to the ground. A great sense of despair washed over me. Was I reborn just to be bitten to death by zombies? At the critical moment, a clear click sound rang out, and the grip on my leg suddenly disappeared. It was Hank who came. The next second, he kicked away the zombie on my leg, threw away the fire axe, and bent down to hug me. "It's okay now." As he said this, he grabbed the clean corner of the pink down jacket and wiped the zombie blood off my face. The thick and soft down jacket somehow made me feel safe. My emotions could no longer be controlled, and I buried myself in the down jacket and burst into tears. "Hank, I'm here." He stroked my head in an appeasing manner. This was the first intimate touch with Hank. My face was burning hot, and I quickly pointed at the broken copper lock on the ground. "The lock is broken. If more zombies come up later, we're done for." I saw the spare lock you bought on the 6th floor and locked the 6th floor when I passed by. Hank pursed his thin lips. "Most of the zombies in this area are over there in the tall buildings where people gather. I've already cleared most of the zombies in this apartment building." After that, Hank and I spent an hour rail-locking the iron gate and improving the traps I had installed before. Finally, having fulfilledly, we got back home. Hank stepped inside sideways and immediately put the door stopper back in place. He looked around and pointed at the large wooden cabinet beside him, asking, "Is there anything important in here?" "No." I shook my head. Then we worked together to push the cabinet in front of the damaged titanium alloy door, which served as the second door. Hank got caught in the rain and was completely soaked. I found a dry towel and handed it to him. "Wipe yourself first." "Okay." I was about to take him to the bathroom, but to my surprise, he turned around and walked into the bathroom as if he knew the place well. Suddenly, he stuck his head out and said to me, "Go and sit on the sofa and rest." "Okay. Okay." I nodded subconsciously. When I sat on the sofa, after a while, I realized that this was my home. I changed out of the blood-stained clothes, wiped my face with a wet wipe, rummaged through the wardrobe, and took out a few loose women's clothes and knocked on the bathroom door. "Change your clothes. Those are all dirty." With a click, the door opened, and a pair of long and powerful hands stuck out. Somehow, I involuntarily took a step back. After a while, Hank came out wrapped in a strawberry bunny bath towel. It didn't fit at all. The outline of his pectoral muscles was faintly visible, and a small part of his thigh was also exposed, giving the feeling that an adult was wearing a child's clothes. Hank's gaze finally landed on the clothes in my hand. Well, how should I put it? There was probably a bit of resentment in his eyes. I laughed unkindly. "Are you kidding me?" Hank frowned slightly. Since the blackout curtains were drawn, I boldly lit a candle. Now the candlelight was flickering in the living room, and it would be a lie to say that I wasn't shy. I averted my gaze and tried my best to calm my rapid breathing. There's no other way. There are no clothes at home. The air seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Hank let out a dry laugh. All right. I'll do as you say. After that, he took the clothes from my hand and made a gesture to untie the bath towel and change. I suddenly covered my eyes. And then secretly left a small gap and took a quick glance at him. Just one glance. As a result, Hank was neatly dressed, under the bath towel. And I saw nothing. Hank seemed to sense something and gave me a sudden sideways glance. Put your hands down and look. I, who was caught red-handed, holding the belief that life passes by quickly. When the feeling of embarrassment comes more often, it doesn't seem so embarrassing anymore. On the morning of the 10th day of the apocalypse, the rain was getting heavier and heavier. The most urgent thing now was still to deal with those zombies that were gradually evolving intelligence. I hesitated for a whole night and then told Hank about my memories of my previous life and the fact that I was reborn. After all, we had both experienced the apocalypse. Hank's pupils shrank slightly. And he wasn't too surprised by this. I seized the opportunity and said, Hank. Actually, I'm not your grandfather's illegitimate daughter. I really needed that money at that time. Hank clicked his tongue softly, rubbed his temple with a slightly headache-head expression, and let out a dry laugh, saying that he didn't know how he could have believed that I was his aunt at that time. You really believed it? I lowered my head guiltily. Although in the apocalypse, money was not as important as a piece of biscuit, I did lie to him in order to survive at that time. Hank let out a long sigh and said, Fortunately, having fulfilled my ipsi, it was fake. Otherwise, I picked up the bank card that I had used to prop up the table leg and handed it to him with both hands. All the things in this house were bought with the 50 million yuan given by Hank's mother. But I can swear that I planned to return the money the day before the apocalypse broke out. Really? I won the 50 million yuan lottery. But the bank said that since I had just opened a personal account, they flatly refused to allow the transfer. Hank took a deep look at the card in my hand, and then pinched my face. Why do you want to return the meeting gift my mother gave you to me? Huh? There was an indescribable affection rippling in the air. For a while, we both tacitly remained silent. If it's really the same as in your memories, then the traps downstairs need to be redesigned. Great minds think alike. I nodded. I bought a lot of trap parts. For those with high lethality. Like the crossbow you used to kill the zombie that climbed onto the balcony before. I don't know how to assemble them. But I bought the blueprints and planned to figure it out slowly. Hank's long and deep eyes tilted slightly. And he suddenly raised his hand and pinched my face hard. Back then, when I taught you how to assemble traps to defend against wild animals, it was like it was killing you. I covered my face and glared at Hank angrily. But I couldn't refute him. If it weren't for the skills he forced me to learn back then, I might not have been able to hold on until he came to save me and would have been killed by that family. However, the traps made in the corridor are good. You bought quite a complete set of things. Consider it a pass. Hank praised me for the first time. It took us the whole morning to draw up a plan for upgrading the traps and also make an escape plan as a last resort. Hank had been observing the surrounding zombies with a telescope for the past few days and discovered some clues. The zombies had changed from gathering to look for living people to just gathering in small groups. And it seemed that they would obey the orders of a certain zombie among them. If they were commanded to form a zombie horde and attack our apartment building, it would be very difficult to deal with. As a last resort, we could only leave here. For this reason, we decided that if it really came to that, we would first go to the rooftop and use the climbing rope and fire pipeline to leave here. Hank left an SUV in his private garage downstairs. The trunk had a large space. Enough to hold a month's worth of clothes and food supplies. Canned fruits take up too much space. Just take vitamin tablets for supplementation directly. Bring 2 sets of warm clothes each. Oh, remember to take gloves. Wait a minute. I specially bought a wireless radio. Maybe we can use it on the road. After discussing the general things to do, Hank and I started making new traps. With Hank's help, the lethality of the crossbow increased dramatically. I'll assemble these. You go and get something to eat. Suddenly, Hank's body froze. and he raised his hand to press his temple. Looking in great pain, I quickly stepped forward to help him sit on the sofa. In just a few breaths, the veins on Hank's face turned purple-black, and his eyes were scarlet and terrifying. That was a precursor to turning into a zombie after being infected. I involuntarily took a step back and asked tremblingly, "Hank, why are your eyes turning red?" Hank shook his head, forced a smile, and looked very downcast. "Don't be afraid. It'll be okay." After that, he walked straight to the bedroom with a fingerprint lock that belonged to the landlord. Beep. The unlocking was successful, and the bedroom door opened. After Hank went in, he said to me, "No matter what you hear, don't come in." My hands and feet went numb, and it took me a while to calm down. It usually only takes 15 minutes to half an hour for a living person to be infected with the virus and turn into a zombie. But I had been with Hank for most of the day, and he hadn't turned into a zombie and bitten me. Moreover, there were no wounds on his body from being scratched or bitten by a zombie. No, I couldn't be sure of this. What if he was a special case and had already mutated? Was I going to kill him with my own hands? During a day of a sort of Cold War, I imagined countless possibilities and finally knocked on the door of the bedroom where Hank was. He ignored me. I persevered. Finally, heading to Feldweihe. After a long while, Hank opened the door a crack. "Don't come near me yet." Hank moved back a bit, trying to keep his distance from me. The purple-black color on his face had already faded, but his eyes were still scarlet. After that, he immediately tried to close the door. How could that be possible? I immediately used the feather duster beside the door to block it. "Let's talk." After a long standoff, he reluctantly let me into the room. When I entered the room, I was completely stunned. This room was filled with records and sneakers collected by Hank. The wardrobe was also full of the clothes that Hank used to like to wear. Even the faint smell of laundry detergent in the room was incredibly familiar. For a moment, I blurted out, "Hank, hadden på Selvwide. You rented this apartment to me. Right?" This was something that I should have thought of when Hank unlocked the door and entered this room long ago. But I only noticed the clue now. Hank was stunned for a few seconds and then simply nodded and admitted it. "Did you make up the rumor about the haunted house?" "Yeah." Hank pursed his lips and said somewhat haltingly, "You're not afraid of ghosts, are you?" Hank walked to the wall that used to have bloodstains on it. "Actually, those were all ketchup." He was such a cold and aloof person. But when he was being serious, I found it a bit funny. Even his scarlet eyes didn't seem so terrifying anymore. "I rented this apartment last year. That is to say, after I met Hank. He made up the ghost story so that he could rent it to me at a low price." There was a feeling in my heart that was about to burst out. Forget it. I was going to tell you all this sooner or later. Hank took the lead in breaking the deadlock and took out a thick stack of A4 papers. They were filled with all kinds of data and linear graphs that I couldn't understand, as if he was calculating something. "A zombie horde is about to break out, and it'll be in the next few days." Huh? I took the A4 papers from his hand and skipped over the complicated calculations to look at the conclusion. Even the abnormal weather and the time of the zombie's evolution almost matched up. How do you know there will be a zombie horde? These things couldn't be calculated just by simple calculations. I was able to know in advance about the outbreak of the apocalypse and stockpile supplies to save my life because I was reborn. Was Hank the same as me? "Hank, are you also reborn? When were you reborn?" I asked excitedly. He clicked his tongue softly and said somewhat haltingly, "Since I got caught in the rain yesterday. I've been having headaches from time to time. The specific time should be when we were making the traps together yesterday." "Then why did your eyes turn red? Were you bitten by a zombie that day?" "Let me see the wound quickly." My mind went blank for a moment, and I reached out to lift his clothes. Halfway through, my hand froze. He didn't say anything. And was I being too lecherous? Hank saw through my thoughts and let out a low, dry laugh. "Don't think too much. I'm just worried about you." Hank didn't believe my words at all. He pointed at his scarlet eyes that were as red as blood and said, "I'm not injured. Not only have I been reborn, but the zombie virus I was infected with in my previous life has also come back." I was completely stunned at that moment. and my legs and feet didn't obey me. They were shaking like a motor. Damn it. I'm here as food. Through the thick clothes. Hank suddenly grabbed the back of my neck. You came here on your own. And now you want to run away. It's too late. My legs were shaking even more violently. Don't worry. I won't eat you. You swear? Okay. I swear. Hank said that his memories were a bit fragmented. It took him a long time in the room to figure things out, and he couldn't remember the specific time points clearly either. He could only spend time calculating them. After listening, I nodded and gradually let down my guard, curiously sizing up Hank's eyes. As time passed bit by bit, we had replaced all the traps in the corridor. Their lethality had increased several times. On the 37th day of the apocalypse, the two of us went to the rooftop to prepare the climbing ropes for escape. The exposed firewater pipes outside the apartment were easy to find. I quickly took the climbing rope and gestured to figure out the best escape route. Little Qiuqiu. Where are you running? Hank grabbed the back of my collar and pulled me back. The back of my head hit his hard pectoral muscles, and I gasped in pain. There are zombies outside the building. Hank pulled me behind him and tight, and his grip on the tang dao in his hand a little more. I followed his gaze. Sure enough, there were a lot of zombies below that could climb with their bare hands. Roar roar. Roar. The few zombies closest to the rooftop roared at me. Their rotten hands hesitantly touched the edge of the balcony. But for some reason, they retreated. They seemed to be afraid of something. Otherwise, they would have definitely broken into the balcony of my house. I glanced at Hank. His eyes were completely scarlet. Close your eyes, Hank said. I immediately closed my eyes. The sound of slashing and stabbing lasted for about 5 or 6 minutes. And the roars of the zombies disappeared. Hank put down the tang dao, buried his head in the crook of my neck, and hugged me a little tighter. Don't open your eyes, he reprimanded in a low voice. I didn't believe in evil. I secretly squinted my eyes to peek and vaguely saw a small patch of black appear on Hank's neck again. Fortunately, it disappeared quickly, having fulfilled my obsessure. And I secretly let out a sigh of relief. We installed the climbing rope and packed it in a box and placed it in the corner. Then we returned to the apartment. As soon as we closed the door, I couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, tell me the truth. Why do you like calling me little Qiuqiu? I looked down at myself carefully. Actually, I'm not that round. Why did he give me such a round nickname? Little Qiuqiu. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Hank coughed lightly, and his expression was a bit unnatural. I didn't need to guess. Just by looking at Hank's evasive eyes, I knew it definitely wasn't a good thing. Really, there's nothing to it. Hank pursed his lips, and his blood-colored eyes involuntarily moved downward. Look at how stubborn he is. Little Qiuqiu. I'm really not lying to you. Pretend. Keep pretending. After a long while, Hank couldn't hold on anymore. He supported his forehead and laughed bitterly. Do you remember the first time we met? Of course. It was the time when you brought the cake back to me. Hank shook his head mysteriously. After hearing Hank's version, I immediately put down the yogurt cereal in my hand. He said that the first time he saw me was in the school cafeteria. He saw a girl order both Millet and Mealby. She wolfed down Millet at one seat. Then, let out a low sigh. She carefully changed to another seat, opened Mealby, and chewed it slowly. At that time, he was working part-time in the cafeteria frying steaks. And that Mealby was made by him. Later, he went to ask that girl if the food was delicious while wearing a chef's uniform. As a result, the other party was too busy eating and perfunctorily answered him a few words. Now I can't help but wonder how I perfunctorily replied to Hank at that time. Your mouth was puffed out like 2 little balls at that time. It was really. How should I put it? You looked very appetizing. I tightly pursed my lips. Was it really that round? I didn't believe it. Hank smiled and vigorously rubbed my face but didn't say anything. My fists clenched. Are you angry? Hank leaned back on the sofa, slightly squinting his narrow eyes, and said helplessly, Little Qiuqiu is so petty. Since I couldn't beat him, I simply got up and went back to my room. The moment I got up biting a piece of bread, a familiar dull pain shot through my lower abdomen. and I froze. What a coincidence. The clothes I'm wearing today are light-colored, and the bloodstains can't be hidden at all. What's wrong? Hank turned his head and glanced at me, then immediately averted his gaze. His face was even redder than his eyes. Hank. It took me a while to find my voice. My cheeks were burning hot. I left those things downstairs. I'll go get them, Hank said quickly. Bang. Before Hank had taken a few steps out the door, a surviving zombie outside the balcony couldn't wait to break the railing and was about to rush in. Roar in a flash. Hank turned back to my side, took off his coat, and wrapped it around my waist. Then he decisively dealt with the remaining zombie that could climb. The blood of the living should make them even more excited. You come downstairs with me. Don't be afraid. I'll protect you. There were still traces of the family being bitten by zombies on both sides of the corridor. The stench of rotting blood was disgusting. Quickening our pace, we soon reached the 8th floor. The supplies I left here before had been rummaged through in a mess, and I had a bad premonition in my heart. Could it be that the bald man didn't die? Hank patted me on the shoulder and told me not to let my imagination run wild. After finding the urgently needed sanitary pads, I quickly went to the bathroom. After that, Hank and I took some snacks that were placed in the corner and hadn't been damaged, and we walked back. It was a bit dark in the corridor. The ground was scattered with pieces of paper that had been blown in by the strong wind. Somehow, I picked up a piece of paper. The handwriting on it was crooked. It clearly stated that an old woman and her granddaughter were struggling to survive in this apartment building. They hoped that kind-hearted people would share some food with them, and the address was no. XXX. I exchanged a look with Hank. He pursed his lips and was about to say something, but I interrupted him without thinking. Don't go. Hank leaned against the wall. His blood-red eyes slightly squinted, as if he was making a difficult decision. When we were volunteering together, I knew that this guy was kind-hearted to the core. But in the apocalypse, kindness is linked to death. Zombies won't pose a threat to Hank, but people are different. I'd rather he be a cold-blooded bad guy. What if it's true? Hank furrowed his brows. For a moment, it seemed as if something had gripped my heart. I bit my lip and pulled him to the iron window. Hank, do you know that on the night the zombie virus broke out, I watched by the window all night long? There was originally a couple in that black Mercedes-Benz. I saw with my own eyes that scumbag push his girlfriend into the mouths of the zombies and run away himself. There was also that zombie holding a doll under the street outside. Her father abandoned and her with his own hands in order to save his own life. Okay. I won't go. Hank tightly held my hand, as if making a promise. I'll listen to you. Let's live well together. It was getting colder and colder. The zombie horde was approaching, and Hank and I decided to transfer all the remaining escape supplies to the SUV at once. Is this really enough for the two of us to keep warm? Little Qiuqiu. Trust me. It's better to put more food than clothes. All right. These days, Hank and I have tested that those zombies won't approach the area within 10 meters around his body. As long as I'm in this area, I'll be safe. We were lucky in the previous few times. With the advantage of Hank's mutation, we have already dealt with all the zombies that can climb nearby. The SUV has also been driven downstairs to the apartment. If there's really no other way, we can also come down from the rooftop along the climbing rope and drive to escape. Plans can never keep up with changes. I don't know if it's because of Hank's and my rebirth that caused the zombie horde to break out ahead of time. That day, I saw Hank completely zombified for the first time. His face was ferocious, just like a fierce ghost from the underworld. It's just that the zombie horde arrived ahead of time. It's okay. We've already made all the arrangements. I reached out to grab his hand, but he directly dodged it. Little Qiuqiu. His expression was very suppressed, and his scarlet eyes were almost dripping with blood. I may not be able to accompany you. You have to go alone. In an instant, all the strange things he had done during this period made sense. Even though he has the ability to prevent zombies from approaching me, he still wanted to set up a climbing rope on the rooftop to escape. Even though he was so afraid of the cold, he still asked me to put fewer clothes and more food, because from the beginning, he didn't plan to leave with me. It's not that he didn't want to. But he wasn't sure that he wouldn't hurt me after completely turning into a zombie. Hank said that in his previous life. He had looked for me for a long time and finally found me in the apartment when the zombie horde broke out. But at that time, I had already starved to death. My body was curled up on the living room carpet, rotting and stinking. Obviously, it was something that happened in the previous life, but his eyes became even redder when he talked about it. In fact, with the strength of Hank's family, he could have gone to a safer place. There was no need for him to pester me for supplies. In this life, because of my rebirth, a butterfly effect occurred, and a lot of things have changed. After hearing my repeated reminders to stock up on supplies, Hank somehow moved to the apartment opposite before the apocalypse broke out. What happened after the zombie horde? Hank shook his head and closed his eyes in despair. I don't know. It seems that he probably also died in that zombie horde. Little Qiuqiu. Once the zombie horde breaks out, my ability to prevent zombies from approaching you will be greatly weakened. And I'm not even sure if I'll mutate again under the influence of the zombie horde, if you find that something is wrong with me later. With that, Hank handed me that sharp tang dao. Use this to kill me. The tang dao is so sharp that it can cut through iron like mud. I've witnessed Hank using this knife to chop off the heads of many zombies. But I never thought that this knife would one day be used on him. With a clang, the knife fell to the carpet and made a big gash. We don't have much time left. Why didn't you tell me these things earlier? I couldn't control myself and raised my voice, trying to hide the panic in my heart, but there was still a trace of a sob in my voice. Little Qiuqiu. Don't be sad. Maybe I still have a chance to continue protecting you. Now you have to survive. Without asking, Hank wrapped me tightly in his clothes, trying to reduce my presence as much as possible. In the distance, a dense stream of zombies piled up together. Sensing the smell of living people, they let out roars and swarmed over, moving even faster than normal people. There were also more zombies in the corridor. Although they didn't dare to get too close to Hank, the distance was still too near. If I was scratched, I would be infected very quickly. Hank and I withdrew from the apartment together. He went to the 6th floor to activate all the traps, while I went to the rooftop to make preparations first. As soon as I reached the rooftop, I heard strange noises coming from beside the small attic at the edge of the rooftop. The next second, a skinny middle-aged man blocked my way with an axe in his hand. It was the bald man who had a band and his wife and children that day. Bitch. You killed my wife and children. Why don't you go and die? I never expected that he could have survived among the zombies and managed to live for so long. No wonder the supplies I had placed on the 8th floor were in such a mess. It was you who pushed them towards the zombies to buy yourself time to escape. Now you're blaming others. Can't you have some decency? Just thinking about the scene of him pushing his wife and son towards the zombies and running away himself that day, I felt disgusted by this man. But this man had already gone crazy. He roared with a sinister laugh. I didn't do anything wrong. One of them was injured, and the other was so weak. Keeping them around would only hold me back. You. I was about to argue, but he suddenly swung the axe down. I quickly dodged to the side and narrowly avoided being hit. Hank rushed over in a hurry, pulled me to a safe place, and dealt with the bald man alone. The man gave me a fierce glare. Don't think you're safe just because your lover is here. I've installed speakers and loudspeakers in this apartment. As soon as I press the button and attract the zombies, you're all going to die. Upon hearing this, Hank's face dark and in the dim light. The bald man still thought it wasn't enough. He raised the axe and pointed at Hank, saying, "But I'm willing to give you a chance. In the apocalypse, women are useless and will only drag you down. As long as you kill her, I'll let you off the hook, and we'll split the supplies downstairs equally." Crazy. Hank cursed in a low voice. "Make a decision quickly. I'll count to 5. I want both of your lives. 1, 2, 3. During the confrontation, Hank and I exchanged a glance. And he said to the bald man, "Fine. But I don't have a weapon. Lend me your axe." Hank said coldly, "Sure. I'm not afraid of any tricks you might try." The bald man sneered. The moment he threw the axe to Hank, I took the opportunity to take up the tang dao that Hank had hidden behind me for self-defense and struck the bald man hard. With a swish. It missed slightly, only severing the bald man's arm. Playing dirty. I'll kill you both today. As he said this, he took out a pistol from his waist. In a flash, Hank chose to fully transform into a zombie. Taking advantage of the superiority of the zombie virus, he rushed over in an instant, snatched the gun, and counterattacked the other party. The matter wasn't over yet. With his last breath, the man pressed the switch of the speaker, laughed maniacally towards the sky, opened his mouth as if to say something, but then died. For a moment, the entire floor of the building shook. The zombies roared and rushed onto the rooftop frantically. Hank shot the zombies in the head, but the bullets were quickly used up, so he had to use the tang dao to fend off the zombies. His physical strength was consuming rapidly, and the veins on his forehead bulged. By accident, his arm was scratched by a zombie, and dark red blood immediately flowed out. The smell wasn't pleasant, but it made the frenzied zombies back away. Hank. Your eyes. The red color faded, and I couldn't tell if it was a good or bad sign. The surrounding zombies moved a bit further away. The crisis was temporarily averted. I lifted Hank's sleeve to check the wound, and tears couldn't stop streaming down my face. Little Qiuqiu. Don't cry. He forced a smile and wiped the tears from my face. His lips had also turned much paler, and he looked rather weak. It was as if something was choking my throat, and I couldn't say a word. We had just escaped from death, and there were still zombies eyeing us menacingly. The blood on Hank's arm kept flowing, as his scarlet eyes gradually returned to normal. The zombies beside us became more and more agitated. In the zombie horde, it was only a matter of time before we were torn apart by the zombies. Hank. I'm here. He smiled at me reassuringly, and there was a deep affection in his eyes. At that moment, it seemed as if all the stars had fallen on my head. Using all my strength, I took the initiative to kiss him. Side story: the last kiss before life and death separation. Little Qiuqiu seemed to have used all her strength. So much so that she didn't even hear the sound of the army shooting and killing the zombies. Someone carried a medical kit and got off a helicopter. Excuse me. You two should get the antiviral vaccine first before continuing. In an instant, her face turned extremely red. I hid her behind me, rolled up my sleeve, and stretched out my arm in front of the military doctor. With the injection of that dose of vaccine, the blood-red color in my eyes faded a lot and approached normal. I have to say, the power of technology is really that great. Soon it was her turn. I covered her eyes and said to the military doctor, "She's afraid of needles. Please take care." After giving her the vaccine, the military personnel thoroughly cleared the zombies in this area. The military installed several satellite broadcasts in the community. After leaving some antiviral drugs, they left without a trace. In fact, there were still some survivors in several apartment buildings far from us around. After this zombie incident, everyone tacitly kept their distance. On the 99th day of the apocalypse, little Qiuqiu, who could eat to steaks, finally belonged to me alone. On the 103rd day of the apocalypse, through the satellite broadcast, everyone learned that most of the zombies in the urban area had been cleared, and the supply of supplies was gradually no longer tight. So people gradually started to interact with each other. 1 year after the outbreak of the apocalypse, I took little Qiuqiu back to my hometown, and the misunderstanding about the 50 million yuan was finally resolved. 3 years after the outbreak of the apocalypse, the zombie virus was completely eliminated a few days before the Spring Festival, and everything returned to normal. But the story of me and little Qiuqiu didn't end here. A long and magnificent spring in the future is about to arrive. The end.